Welcome, Praetors, to the grim darkness of the 31st millennium. Today, we are talking about the Horus Heresy as a game. Rather than being a normal review or tutorial or something like that, instead, I just want to ask some basic questions of is this game worth trying? Is it for me? Because before I started playing this game, I would see these trickle of releases and be like, well, I wonder what that's about. I was just very curious on the sidelines. And you hear kind of things in the nerdosphere about they're hardcore historical, in quotes, kind of gamers, or it's very gatekeepery. There's a lot of things. And so I have found this game to be incredibly interesting, very compelling, and there's some great storytelling opportunities. It's a thing that I am passionate about. I now have a local scene set up kind of within a few hour radius of people who can reliably play with me. And so I want to chat Horus Heresy. Because while there are, of course, on the internet, as with every community, gatekeeper, neckbeard types, there are also creators who just are really passionate and want to share what they're excited about. That'll be myself, and I will also be featuring some in interviews and guest appearances and that kind of thing. We have some great content creators here in the Midwest who are very passionate about the game as well. But to answer those essential questions of, is this game worth trying or is it for me, there's a lot of ways to approach a game or a subject to see if it's for you. Okay, we're going to need some place to start. But I promise by the end of this video, you'll know if you're interested or not. Right up top, I'd like to add, if you are interested in this game or any Horus Heresy stuff, or really anything, Noble Knight Games here in the Midwest is an awesome store that offers huge discounts on all providers, quick shipping, and awesome customer support. They are a local mom and pop shop just online. Every time you use that affiliate link down below, it goes to supporting me as a content creator at no cost to you. And it goes a long way to supporting me, my wife, our two little goblins, the cats. It's life-changing stuff, and I appreciate every single bit of it. So moving into our topic of what is the Horus Heresy? Well, it's an immersive and exciting tabletop game set in the 40k universe, as we know the game Warhammer 40k, their flagship title, but it's of course a prehistory before that, the prologue, if you will, to the events of Warhammer 40,000, roughly 10,000 years earlier, although there's kind of a big span of time there. This game allows players to become commanders of these huge armies, engage in very strategic battles. And because it's so heavy into storytelling, in my opinion, it's fantastic for having a narrative that shapes the nature of the galaxy, or at least your little sector of it. It does have rules that seem very, I would say, overwhelming at the get-go. That it is kind of a very crunchy game, but we'll talk more about that in a second. It also has intricate lore, some incredible storytelling, wonderful characters to try and follow. And at the end of the day, my real sales pitch for this game is it gives you a narrative experience that, because it has more rules, it can articulate more things and delivers itself some very compelling storytelling. So on the storytelling part, the Horus Heresy game, as its name provides, is set in this epic civil war that is happening within the Imperium. We've talked about this at my podcast, The Emperor Protects, which you can find here on my YouTube channel. But essentially, the forces of chaos turn the finest son of the Emperor, his second-in-command Horus, the War Master, to chaos, and initially, it's not all, at least the overwhelming majority of the battle is not about demons and monsters and all these kind of esoteric alien horrors that we see in Warhammer 40,000, but in Horus Heresy, it's really a civil war, meaning brother versus brother, largely equally equipped, although they do have things that make them unique. But it's this devastating civil war that tore the Imperium in half nearly. It has an intricate narrative with gripping tales of betrayal and heroism, sacrifice. You can build very detailed campaigns with very meaningful consequences as a result of these crunchy rules. There's just a ton of opportunities to unravel the mysteries of this tumultuous period that shape the course of everything else that makes Games Workshop money. Now, let's talk about that complexity in the rules that I had mentioned up top. This is where a lot of people kind of get the big nope factor when it comes to Horus Heresy, is that the rules seem very overwhelming. And I won't lie to you, Horus Heresy is a game that demands strategic thinking and tactical decision-making. You have to plan your moves, utilize your troops effectively, think about what their actual weapon loadouts are. There's a lot more nuance when it comes to terrain, different types of attacks and how they can target different enemies. Strength and toughness are different. But because it does have more granularity to those rules, it can articulate more things. There are all kinds of crazy weapons, from stuff that like melts marines. There's arc reactors that'll lightning bolt between them, radiation weaponry. There's just all kinds of weird things. And so when you have more rules, you can articulate them in a more meaningful way. Personally, I think it provides a significant challenge, and it's very rewarding when you win, or at least give the opponent a bloody nose. And the way that I explain it to people when it comes to kind of giving you a sense, because people will ask in the comments of the podcast that I do, like, what's the rules difference between 40K and Horus Heresy? And the way that I look at it is, if we create a spectrum where on one end is abstract rules, meaning random stuff or vague things to convey an idea, versus the more granular. AOS and 40K lean much more in the abstract side, whereas Horus Heresy is on the granular side. A clear example of that, if you think about it, in 40K is shooting a tank, or firing from a tank, right? You have to do the hit roll, wound roll, save roll, damage roll. The abstract part is that tank is essentially a 360-degree cylinder that exists in the sky. Whereas in Horus Heresy, when you get granular about it, you still have those same rules. However, now you have to worry about which direction the sponsons are facing, which direction the exit for your troops is if you're having a transport. If you're a tank that gets hit, rather than just taking wounds like it does in 40K, where you have like a, roll a die on a 6, the thing blows up, that's very generic to all the different units. There's an entire table for what happens when you take a really massive hit. And it's really cool things like you lose a weapon. The crew gets rattled around, so they lose a turn, basically. There's one where you just, it detonates a weapons cache and the whole thing goes up. There's just a bunch of really cool results that you can have. And again, because it has more levers to pull, you're telling a more detailed story. And of course, all those things happen in real life, right? Magazines get detonated, tracks break, and so on. 40K smooths past those things to kind of keep the game going in its flow, which I do appreciate, honestly. But Horus Heresy leans into that and is like, no. What happened to this tank? You could tell every single shot that was fired, what it did exactly to the crew at the end of a Horus Heresy game, and that's really cool. And as a result, you get a game where the cinematic play-by-play develops in real time. Both games can be used to tell epic battles that, they contribute to a greater story, but Horus Heresy articulates it so much more with its rules by being more granular, and it really spells out what is happening. It's just a different kind of narrative experience. As for the hobby side of things, this is kind of where some folks get a little cautious. So, just like every other Games Workshop game, these models are amazing. Right? There's been absolute bangers that have been coming out for Horus Heresy, just like every other game system that they've been making. You still got to build them, still got to paint them. All that stuff is a one-for-one copy for any other miniatures game that you play from GW. Where people get a little bit apprehensive when it comes to Horus Heresy is how much freedom do players have? Specifically when it comes to the painting of their legions. Because this game is kind of, honestly, I feel like it's written and articulated in a way that is very reminiscent of historical games, but of course it's not. It's not a historical game. None of this is real. It's all space fantasy. So where's the line? And to me, I would just say, that is up to your local group and TO. The people you play the most with are the ones that I think their opinion weighs more, so get off the internet and go talk to them. I will also remind you of two very important factors, though, and we can hold these two truths to be equally, important, even though they seem diametrically opposed. On one hand, you do actually have quite a bit of freedom when it comes to this. It is not so simple as this Legion, Imperial Fists are yellow, they have to be spray painted yellow. That's not true. There's actually dozens of different painting, what do they call them, palettes or whatever, like the painting schemes for the various legions, because they split up so much across the nature of the conquest of the galaxy during the Great Crusade. They had different honors, they bore different colors and symbolic remembrance of different events, and so you'll have stuff like Imperial Fists that are mostly black with just the slightest hint of yellow, or maybe they're a bone color, that kind of stuff. You can really do a lot. For my Sons of Horus, I integrated a lot of hazard stripes, which are traditionally reserved for Iron Warriors and then different I don't know, special weapons and that kind of stuff. I love that stuff on armor, so I painted it. It looks amazing. It's not anywhere, and people love it. Conversely, I said we have two kind of opposing truths in our hands. On the other hand, if you are entering into a game that the community and the designers are portraying as, you know, a Civil War type game, there's certain expectations with that. I actually went to a Gettysburg event, was it last year? Maybe a year and a half ago, for my wife. She was having a book signing out there, and so I went with her, and I stumbled upon a whole bunch of, they were the coolest, nicest people in the world. They were doing a miniature wargaming retreat at the same hotel, and it was wargaming like Napoleonics, but for the Civil War. And I thought about that. I was like, you know, when these guys show up, they are coming with an expectation. Their opponent's going to bring the opposing faction specifically, and they're going to work out how this battle actually goes down. It is a collaborative effort by its nature, and they're both allowed to have the same expectations. If the expectation is that your legion needs to, at least in some capacity, represent a legion that existed in the game's history, I don't think that's an unreasonable thing, just as I don't think it's unreasonable for those guys to shoo me out of the room if I put my Space Marines down across from their Civil War people. American Civil War. And while it's easy to give opinions online that just are making things black and white, like everything else, there's a nuance between you respecting your opponents, the games you want to play, and how you want to play them. Just talk to people, be human, and be kind. It's one of those things that it gets talked about so much online that it might seem like a big barrier to entry, like, oh man, if I join in this game, I have to have an opinion on this. Not really. I've been to a bunch of cons now, and the Horus Heresy room is always the most fun. Like, everyone's just having the best time, laughing a ton, ridiculous things are happening, and they're having a great time. And really, that's actually the last thing I wanted to hit on in terms of why I think people should try this game, and that is the community aspect. Yes, it's easy to hear about the grognards of any given community, because backlash and negativity is often the news that rises to the top. But first of all, I'm getting into Horus Heresy, and I only talk about things that make me happy. If I don't like something, probably won't do a video on it. And I do think there are a large number of content creators who have come out of the woodwork, or at least started channels since the release of Horus Heresy 2.0. Because if you are now new to this, whole nerd ecosystem of miniature wargames, Horus Heresy existed as sort of like an ancillary product for, I don't know, people who just have so much money that they're bleeded out of their skin. So it was like a secondary thing from Forge World, which is a different company owned by GW. But like, it's this whole weird thing. Then they brought it into the main company, which is now why you see Horus Heresy on the top bar of the GW website. And since that time, a lot of folks have really kind of come together and be like, oh, this is a fully supported thing. They're going to stand behind this. Heck yeah, let's talk about it. And so I plan to highlight those here. And so let's wrap up this video, as we do with all of them, by talking about why is this cool. It's got gripping lore, challenging mechanics. It's a very rewarding hobby aspect, especially if you start getting into the different painting techniques for like weathering and grime and that kind of stuff. One kind of soft bonus of so many of the different units being shared by other legions, like everybody basically gets like 3 to 5 unique units or characters, and then they share everything else. So I can have a tactical squad in any legion. I can have Praetors in any legion. You could do anything you like, build whatever army you want. But because you take from the same pool, a lot of the stats are ubiquitous across all the players. There's other armies you can play, like the Astra Militarum or the Mechanicus, that kind of stuff. Mechanicum, I'm sorry. But overwhelmingly, it's going to be Marines versus Marines, which actually makes gameplay faster because now everybody can know the same information, roll the right rolls with the right numbers. It's kind of funny how that worked out. And with that, you can then take that brain power and focus on telling this story of an epic civil war that sets the stage for some of the craziest cool fiction that exists, which is the Warhammer 40,000 universe. But there's so many questions and motivations and acts of hubris that we see, like the consequences of in 40k, that make for fantastic storytelling in the Horus Heresy 30k. How did Mortarian's Legion of the Death Guard end up the way they did? What is actually wrong with the Blood Angels? Why wasn't Reboot at the Protection of Terra, or at least contributed to the Horus Heresy like he was expected to? And all these questions are answered with incredible campaigns and storytelling. Like that last one I tacked on, how come the Ultramarines weren't around? That is a whole thing called the Battle at Kauth, where the Wordbearers did a surprise attack, and there's epic books about it, like all different kinds of tales of heroism, from up in the sky, down on the ground, tank commanders, there's titans falling from the sky. It's insanity. It is one of the coolest stories, and I absolutely love it. But it's that example of taking a small question and then blowing it up into this incredibly engaging story. So friends, if any of this interests you, I would love it if you would join either the Traitors, i.e. Doug's team, the winners, or the forces of the Loyalist for the Emperor. I'm going to be talking about the Age of Darkness box, I believe it's called. Yep, Age of Darkness. And then I'm also going to be wrapping, Legion Imperialis into this, the epic scale version of the Horus Heresy, because I want to be able to play my army on multiple scales, which sounds super fun. So I'll be doing that. You can follow along here. Be sure to click like and subscribe if you are interested in that, and share with a buddy if you know someone who might be interested in the Horus Heresy. Thank you all for watching and supporting the channel. Happy wargaming.